My name is Michael Joseph. I'm a Global Ministries missionary in Colombia, South America. I'm a member of Metro Baptist Church and also an associate member of the First Congregational United Church of Christ in Washington, D.C. I've been a missionary for the past 4 years with Global Ministries in Colombia, and I work with the Peace Commission of the Evangelical Council of Churches of Colombia, which represents Protestant churches all over Colombia. And there we work in peace and justice and human rights, supporting the churches in Colombia as they work towards those goals there in Colombia. I'll be serving again with the Peace Commission. One of the biggest projects that I'll work with this time around is a human rights documentation project. It's a project of the Peace Commission and of Justa Paz, which is a Mennonite organization there in Colombia, that documents human rights abuses where the victims of those human rights abuses are members of Protestant evangelical churches all over the country. And as a critical presence in Colombia, part of what I do is help document those cases, but also provide pastoral care and accompaniment and support for the victims. So a large part of my job is to travel all over the country when situations of violence occur, to be present with the victims and to share with the victims of that violence that I'm in Colombia because millions of people here in the United States, from the United Church of Christ and from the Disciples of Christ, want to be present and want to share with them that we care, that we love them, and that we want to support them and to be praying with them in the midst of the trying time that they're living through. So that's a lot of what I get to do. It can be challenging, but it's also very rewarding to be able to share that moment with folks that are in a difficult situation. I think some of the gifts that I bring is an experience in working in human rights, working in countries that are dealing with human rights problems. I've lived in several countries in Latin America, and prior to going to seminary, I also worked with some human rights organizations, with Witness for Peace and Peace Brigades International. So I bring some of that work in Washington, D.C., so some experience working on advocacy issues as well, which is part of the work that we're doing. We want to accompany the victims in Colombia, to be with them, to help them try to get their lives back on track after they maybe have suffered a violation. But then as church in Colombia and here in the United States, we want to be able to speak out a prophetic voice about what we're seeing, what we're experiencing as churches, that hopefully helps Colombia and the United States create policies and create a situation where we can overcome that violence, where we can live in peace and everyone can enjoy their full human rights, both there and here in the U.S. I think the biggest message that I hear from our partners and folks in Colombia is a message of hope, actually. They're living in the midst of some really difficult situations. The Protestant and evangelical churches are heavily affected by the violence in Colombia, which unfortunately is ongoing. But overwhelmingly, the message that they want to share with their brothers and sisters in the U.S. is a story of hope, that they have a lot of hope, that the churches are vibrant and growing and very much living into their faith of following the living, risen Christ. And that's overwhelmingly what they want to share with churches here in the United States. They want to be in partnership. They want to invite folks to come down and see them in Colombia, to hear their stories and hear about the wonderful work that they're doing even in the midst of a difficult situation, which I think is an important thing for us to hear in the U.S. right now, as at times we can get bogged down in some of the sense of decline, that maybe our churches aren't growing as much as we would like them to be growing here in the U.S. So our brothers and sisters in Colombia are saying, come be a part of what we're doing, get to know us, see how we together are in fact growing and are doing wonderful work around the world. I think I've grown spiritually in this work. When I first went to Colombia, it was about 11 or 12 years ago. I went with a secular human rights organization and was really focused on U.S. policy and changing U.S. policy. And in Colombia, I got to know the churches that were working for peace and the way that their faith sustained the work that they were doing in a very difficult situation. That was very inspiring for me. It spoke to me as a Christian. I was there as a Christian. And it encouraged me to come back to the U.S., to go to seminary, to explore more deeply the connection between my faith and my ideals and my ethics, and then to be able to come back to Colombia as a missionary with Global Ministries feels like I've come full circle in that growth, where I can continue to work on human rights and justice issues, but to do it from a faith perspective, where I can not just participate in protests and trying to change policy, but also preach and speak about these issues from my Christian faith. One of the more powerful things that we've seen in some of the churches in Colombia, many of the churches, well, I should say the majority of Protestant evangelical churches in terms of numbers right now in Colombia are sort of what we would see here as Pentecostal, even neo-Pentecostal, or evangelical churches that traditionally have not emphasized the social aspects of the gospel, been more focused on personal salvation and what goes on within the four walls of the church. But as churches across Colombia have been affected by the violence, as pastors, numbering in the dozens or hundreds of pastors, have been killed and murdered, and thousands and millions of Colombians have been displaced from their homes, churches across Colombia have been affected by that. And so we find all churches in Colombia, almost all churches in Colombia, realizing the need to preach a gospel and live a gospel that goes well beyond the four walls of the church. And that sort of conversion of churches from being inwardly focused to being outwardly focused and reaching out to their whole communities as they're affected by violence has been a very powerful experience, I think, for many churches in Colombia. I just want to say thank you to all of the churches here in the U.S. that are supporting the work in Colombia. It's a thank you for me to be able to be there and to do this work. Without the support here, I wouldn't be able to do that. It's a thank you also from our partners in Colombia who are grateful for the financial support that enables the Peace Commission to continue to do its very important work in Colombia. So we're grateful for that. We would love to have churches and folks come down and visit us in Colombia. That can be a powerful thing for both of us. And just to say, we'll be praying for you, and we hope that you'll be praying for us there in Colombia. We're in this together as brothers and sisters in Christ, and our countries are also very much connected by the politics of what's going on with wars in Colombia and the drug war and all of that. So our countries are very connected, and as brothers and sisters in Christ, we all want to be connected in that work.